Welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I am Representative Gary Hopper. This is Josh.
Hey,
Josh, right? Am I right?
First try.
I got right first try. And tonight we have the honor to have the Honorable Victoria Sullivan,
Hi, thank you
one of
for
my
having me.
favorite humans.
I gotcha.
And you're running for mayor. That's the rumor.
So I've been told. It feels like I'm running for mayor. I'll tell you that.
How's it going out on the
It's
beat?
busy, but it's been really good. It's been great. We've got so much support behind us. And I think when we first started out, people were like, who is this person?
Right.
You know, because, you live in Manchester, you kind of stay in your own little bubble, in your own little ward. And we have gotten so much support from all across the city. It's great. People are ready for change. And we
I don't know
really
how
think
they.
we're taking this on Tuesday. It's going to be really exciting.
I don't understand how they cannot want change.
Yes. I think, honestly, if people look at the city and we put party and politics aside,
Yeah.
right, and you look at it through an unbiased lens, you honestly can't think that we're better off today than we were 2 years ago.
Right.
And that's what we keep asking people, like, are we better off than we were 2 years ago? And opioid deaths in this city are up significantly. Homicides are up. It was 150% before our months of July and August, which were not good months for us.
Right.
Violent crime is up, and businesses are suffering. People don't want to come downtown. I mean, it doesn't feel like the city that we once enjoyed and loved, and people want it back. And people live here because of the kind of city that it is. I mean, it's a big city for New Hampshire, but it's still a small city, and we're losing the things that make Manchester so special.
Yeah, it seems. I was reading an article the other day. It's on the list of most dangerous cities in the state.
It came in number one.
Nice.
For 2020, it came in as the number one
I
most
did-
dangerous city in the state.
Was it prior to that? I wouldn't think
It was
so.
3
It was 3 before that.
last year and the year before that. Yeah, so
It's
crawled up.
it's been declining.
yeah.
Wow.
And the statistics and the information, the data that they used to come up with that assessment are the same that this mayor is using to say that things are better in the city. So I think she's not taking a realistic look at what's going on, or she's hoping that other people aren't.
Yeah,
I think she's hoping that if she keeps saying it's all good, people will believe
I
it.
did hear one statement that either her or her publicist made, was that they're concerned that Victoria Sullivan is focusing on the negative and not all of the good stuff, like all the investment into the city. And my first thought was, what good is all of that good investment into the city if you're just going to let the bad continue to fester?
Yeah, and she keeps saying she brought in 800 high-paying jobs, right? So BAE is renovating a building right now. It's going to have an occupancy permit soon. I'm told by one of the aldermen that there will be an occupancy of 40 people. And then over the course of time, like a long period of time, it could work up to as many as 800 jobs over the course of like years and years. But she makes it seem like they're plopping 800 jobs into this city right now. And, the other part is, she keeps touting that she was involved in getting the Rex Theater up and going again, which it doesn't even open until, I think, tonight, the 30th. That's today,
Oh,
right?
no,
The
no,
30th
no,
was
no.
ribbon cutting.
I saw the photograph.
You saw the ribbon cutting before the ribbon
Yeah,
cutting.
I saw the fake news ribbon cutting.
Yeah, that was
I
interesting,
didn't use
too.
that term, did I? Oh, sorry.
So I think tonight's the actual. But, I had a mom that posted on Facebook that she had come down here to go to the Palace Theater with her daughters. And she said she won't be back. She posted on Facebook, I won't be back. She said the show was wonderful. But the experience that I had with my daughters going from the car to the theater and from the theater back to the car, she said people were actually shooting up and passed out in the park. And I had to walk by that with my children.
You can't walk a single block without someone asking you for money or seeing the cardboard laid out where they're going to sleep tonight.
And you go to the theater in Boston and you don't even come up against that. You know what I mean? Like, I've been to the Wang Theater, the Colonial Theater, and I haven't seen that happening.
No, my grandson was on the way to, I think it was last year, but same thing. he was on the way to school, and one of his friends says, "Hey, there's somebody up there. I think they might be dead." Okay, this is the elementary school on the west side. And so he's just trying to go to school, so he went up there to check on it, and there's a guy, looked like he was dead. So he did the right thing. He didn't touch him, and he went down and talked to the principal, and he didn't know what happened, so I called the Manchester PD that evening and said, yeah, he's still alive. They Narcaned him and brought him in. But there's like somebody basically dying on the
Right.
side of the path on the way to
No, so
Parkside.
the kids walk to school.
And
So
there's
that-
those
that's a
needles
nice,
there, and
pleasant walk to school. In
and
the
there's
morning.
and there's a path. There's another path that goes through there to that school, and there was my grandson has seen needles there also.
Yep, and I know that the downtown businesses are suffering because they've been vocal about it. Tim Baines, who's an alderman here in Ward 3, he has a business downtown, and he has been very vocal on the board. He's brought solutions forward. They've been vetoed by the mayor, and you know, he keeps saying, well, we've got to listen to the businesses. So I went to a business roundtable meeting a few months ago where I think businesses thought they were going to be heard. I know one of the business owners who sat beside me certainly thought that was the intention of the meeting because he left very frustrated. But they weren't heard. They were basically told, you know,
They were lectured to.
it's all, yeah, exactly. And it's all good and it's all great and, you know, nothing to see here. Meanwhile, they're losing income. So it doesn't matter if you, and we've got, you know, just as many businesses that have left the city as are coming in. Like we lost jobs at Dine, and we've had restaurants close. And you know, if you've been to the mall, it's not currently full with stores.
No, they can't keep. people
So
in there
it's
the
not. I mean,
same-
so are there businesses potentially coming in, but will they be able to stay here if we don't have people that visit our downtown area? So it doesn't matter if you just did a great Rex Theater, if people aren't going to come down and visit it because they don't feel safe down here, and that's what it all comes down to. You know, people aren't feeling like the quality of life has decreased, and people aren't enjoying their city as much as they used to.
There's also some. The thing is it seems to be, and I don't understand it. But Democrats, as a rule, seem to create conditions that enable things like homelessness.
Well, yeah, and if we've seen, you know, I've been out talking to people that know sort of how to, really good people that know how to do the work of fixing the city, right? Faith-based groups, nonprofit organizations, just individuals who are in recovery themselves and know how to talk to somebody who is seeking recovery. And you know, they've told me they're not supported by this mayor. They're not supported by, you know, City Hall currently. But she keeps hiring people to take on these roles that the government is not good at. Like, we're not good at this stuff. Let the people that know how to do this work do the work and support them. But she keeps hiring people to do the jobs that these other organizations are really good at doing, that just need support.
And but the problem is that you have these cities. There's a lot of other cities, typically bigger, but same scenario, and you have where the homeless population is enabled,
Yeah.
and so more and more people go into that city where they feel like they might be able to at least eke out a living on the streets.
Well,
And
it's
you have some of the consequences of that, which you don't hear about. Like if you've heard in the news like that, what's the governor of California? What's his name? Newsom or something? Saying that the reason they have wildfires right now is global warming. The truth is that they're not clearing out around the electric wires because of environmentalists. And the other thing they have, and you don't see that hardly reported at all, is the homeless population. Like the other day in California, it was cool out at night, so they start fires to stay warm, the homeless people, and that's the cause of some of those fires you see on the news,
Yep.
but they won't tell you. So they have a very, very severe situation that is growing in Manchester, and they're just, kind of covering it up so nobody, pretend it doesn't exist or something.
Yeah.
we're dragging it down into the same fate as other Democrat municipalities, right? It is a policy. It's an unspoken policy of the Democrat Party that your job is to tax Your job is to take as much money out of the community as possible for yourself and for the government. Your job is to produce an environment that people are dependent on government for food stamps, WIC, and promise that you're going to give them everything. And as long as you can deliver on at least a small portion of that promise, a little bit of welfare here, a few Narcan sticks here, some free needles over here, as long as you can deliver on some of that, then you get voted back into power. You continue to stay in power. And that is the policy of the Democrat Party everywhere, is produce policies that make people dependent on government and keep them dependent on government.
I just have to hope that, and I believe this, I believe there are enough people paying attention in this city because it's affecting so many. I mean, the opioid epidemic has touched every family that I know in one way or another. Either they've lost someone to it, or they've got someone that's currently in recovery, or they're taking care of someone else's children because of it, or they're in, their children are in school with kids that have been through this kind of trauma because of addiction, and their parents being addicted. So everyone's been touched by it. So I'm hoping that enough people are paying attention and realize that things have gone in the wrong direction under this mayor, and they want to participate in this election process, and they want change, and they will bring a couple other people to the polls with them, and they will talk to their neighbors about getting out there, and we can put partisan and politics aside and really do what's best for our city.
It's kind of funny because really mayors shouldn't be all that partisan, but
it shouldn't be, because you need the whole city to come together to fix what's happening.
Right.
But if you've seen like this election, it's from the other side, it's been very partisan. And if you've watched the debates, did you watch the debates?
No.
They were more fun than I thought. I was actually really nervous about the first one, but I ended up having a good time. But in the last debate on NHPR, the mayor had obviously been coached by somebody, and they threw her some bits and pieces about legislation that I had voted on. But they never schooled her in what the process is for legislation, right? So when I actually felt a little bad because she didn't have the information to back it up. But when when you get a bill, the reason we have a hearing on a bill at the State House is because you want to discuss it to see if there's unintended consequences, to see if it's going to deliver what it was intended to do, and to get feedback from other parties that might have more information about how to make it better, or to say, whoa, wait a minute, this is really bad. This is what the consequences are going to be, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So we often don't vote on a bill in a positive way the first time out. We'll vote to kill it, right? Or it will be amended. And so, like, one of the bills that I voted against was amended several times. It ended up coming back to us after a committee of conference, which means we amended it in the House, then the Senate amended it, and then they had to have a conference of people from the House and the Senate to come together, come to an agreement, and that's called a committee of conference. What they agree on goes back to both houses, and if both houses agree, then it passes. So in the end, it passed. But in the beginning, it was a very bad bill that wasn't going to do what was intended, right? The same thing with the kindergarten bill. They're trying to say that I cheated the city out of $2 million for kindergarten. But that kindergarten bill, when it first came out, didn't have any funding attached. The budget had been passed, and there wasn't any funding for it. We had to attach Keno to it for it to actually be funded.
Right.
So, and then in the end, I voted for it, and it passed. But I had also added the amendment that would have allowed, even though like our city offers all-day kindergarten, it would have offered the parents half-day kindergarten as well. So if your school offers full day, you as a parent can say, my child isn't ready for full day, I only want to put them in for half day. They provide their own transportation for kindergarten anyway, and then they can move their child progress them into a full day program.
Right, yeah.
Because in kindergarten, some kids are just turning 5 and some kids are turning 6. And those little ones that are just turning 5 aren't ready for all day necessarily.
They can't sit down for a half a day.
And then the next year I put in the play-based kindergarten bill. So they shouldn't be sitting in their seats all day.
My son, I don't know if it's first grade or kindergarten, I forget what it was. But he comes home from his first day of school and he's wicked mad. He's so mad. So, what's the matter, buddy? You didn't tell me it was all day. He was so upset.
But that's the legislative process. It's not often that you get a bill that is right as soon as it hits the desk. You know what I mean? It goes through a lot of changes.
Unless it's written by a Democrat. Then they just want to push
it
through
no, because it's got to
so
get
that we
through
can
both
see
houses.
what's in it, right?
That's what was happening with the railroad. So in one of the debates, when we were talking about the railroad, and I said it's going to cost $300 million to get the tracks going. It's going to cost $11 million to keep it up every single year. It's been studied and studied and studied. The numbers keep coming out the same. And she said, well, we have a partnership for the $300 million, and we'll worry about the $11 million later. We'll worry about that later. That $11 million that's going to be a cost to the taxpayers. We'll figure that out later. That's not how you do
Right,
things.
we'll figure that out after I'm reelected, then I'll increase taxes for everybody in this city.
Right. And the other thing is we have a tax cap. And according to our charter, which is our our governing document for
Constitution
our
for
city,
this.
the mayor has to put forward a tax cap budget. So she keeps saying she put together a tax cap budget. The first budget that was put in that went over the tax cap was her budget when she was an alderman. And the tax cap budget that she put in this time, she worked, because other aldermen told me that she worked behind the scenes to make sure that it was going to be over the tax cap. She, in both of these debates, praised the aldermen for putting forward the budget that they did that busted the tax cap. Dan O'Neill put in a tax cap busting budget. She praised them for it, and in the New Hampshire Public Radio debate, she actually said they were brave to bring it forward. So she's not honoring the tax cap. She doesn't intend to honor the tax cap, and she doesn't honor the voters that came out and voted in favor of the tax cap.
Right.
And these are things people need to pay attention to, because when we override that tax cap, we have a homeless problem in the city. I don't know if you've heard. And
Really?
when you override the tax cap,
No, we how far away were we from the truck to here? It's not even a block away, half a block tops, right?
A block, yeah, block.
Okay, so like half a block or a block. And we were hit by just getting out of the car. Hey, you got a buck?
yeah.
You know?
But when you override the tax cap, the property taxes increase, right? Because that's what it is. And then our rents increase. So those people that are barely getting by end up not being able to get by.
So help me out here, just for me and viewers who don't understand. The city, the voters voted for a tax cap.
Yep.
There is a tax cap in place.
Yes.
How can the city get away with overriding a tax cap without going back to the city?
So there's a
Back to
provision
the
in there
voters.
that if there is an emergency situation, so say we had some horrific weather incident, right? And something happened that was really bad and we needed funds to be able to repair a bridge or do something in the city that was a safety measure. It was an actual emergency. So there's a provision in there that the alderman can override the tax cap in an emergency. It's never been an emergency when they overrode it.
I don't consider anything an emergency unless before you override it, you've ripped out all the things that are non-emergency.
Mm-hmm.
Those things that are non-emergency, stop funding for those for the emergency items. You don't.
And sometimes
that's the thing, is no one ever expects to take money away from another program and say, hey, you know what? Right now you're not really vital.
Yep.
We need to take some of your money and put it over here to build this bridge, or else the entire economy around this section of Elm Street is going to collapse because we have a bridge that's collapsed, right?
And
So-
we haven't
but
ever
no one's ever
across
reduced
an emergency situation. They've just overridden the tax cap because they chose to. And then
Right.
she could veto it. So if they override it, she could veto it. And it happened under Gatsis, and he vetoed it, and he knew that he didn't have the votes to uphold the veto. But, we've seen that happen at the State House, right? Even though you think you don't have the votes, you still get to the well and you fight for a bill if you really believe in it, because you
Well,
can
yeah, the
change
thing
hearts
is-
and minds. And we have flipped bills.
The thing is,
So
you
you-
can't vote based on
What you
whether or
think
not
the
you
outcome
think
is
you
gonna
may
be.
or may not win. You vote based on what is right or wrong.
That's it.
Period.
And so even if you don't think you have the votes as a mayor, you would give the veto message. A, hoping that you could change some of the hearts on the board, right, to see that it's not the right thing for the city, and B, to tell the taxpayers that you are standing up for them and you're going to fight against this even if the odds aren't in your favor. And Gatsis did that when he was mayor.
How many aldermen have to vote to override the?
I think it's 2/3. I think it's just like the State House. I think it's
Okay, so
2/3.
it has to. So it's a supermajority to
Mm-hmm.
actually override it. So veto's a pretty
Yeah, so
excellent.
not only is it important for the taxpayers to get me in there as mayor, mayor, but it's important to give me an aldermanic board that will uphold the tax cap. And the Concerned Taxpayers of Manchester put out a list of people they've endorsed that will support the tax cap. It's also important to give us a school board that's going to do the right things and live within the budget and prioritize spending and prioritize the kids in that spending.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough haul. But the thing is, for me, as I look at it, I just look around the country and see what happens when they just keep feeding. I'm sure there's exceptions, but most of the large cities that in this country that have been run by Democrats for any length of time are just destroyed.
Well, we've seen how quickly. I mean, when we have a Democrat majority on the board, and as mayor, we have a Democrat mayor, and that's really when things start to go downhill. And like I said, for the city, it shouldn't be about politics or partisan politics, because it's a nonpartisan election.
It's nonpartisan, but
it's been a very partisan board with a very partisan mayor. So work isn't getting done across.
It might not be partisan, but there is a mindset that goes along with those labels.
Or a set of values that goes along.
Set of values.
Yeah.
To give you an example, in San Francisco, they had a stimulus thing because they were trying to get some of the high-tech companies to come into the city. And the high-tech, they gave them a tax break. The high-tech companies came into San Francisco, and the streets are so gross that the company said, okay, we'll do it, but then they had their own cafeteria, so people didn't even have to leave the building. And what happened was, they realized that, and so then the Democrats in San Francisco passed another ordinance that said if you have a business, you can't have a cafeteria inside your business. You have places that people are like leaving, on the main streets and things like they're just leaving their businesses because they have to like walk over homeless people just to get in. And who's going to go into a business?
That's exactly where it leads to, right? Mm-hmm. It gets worse. So businesses who get their tax breaks to come into town, right? So what did BAE get, right?
I think they're paying 200.
They're being enticed. They're being enticed to come into town, right? And if it goes the same way as San Francisco, they're going to start doing the same things. I've worked out there. They either have a cafeteria and all that stuff all in the building, and in a lot of businesses they don't have that. But what they do have is they say, okay, we're going to cater breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Right? It does two things. It keeps their people off the streets. It keeps them at their desk and in their office, right? But they have catering come in so that people don't have to go outside on the streets. In addition to that, I believe it was Google, and there's probably a handful of other organizations out there, they set up their own busing system so that their people don't have to take the public bus system, which is deteriorated and run down and not paid attention to.
Right.
So they've got their own transportation network. They've got their own food network. They've got their and that's, they're making a lot of money, but that's how they're staying there, and they can tout that we're Silicon Valley. We have all the technology companies, but if you're not involved with any of those technology companies, the rest of the city is a complete crap hole.
Well, it's the same thing here. If you go down to the mill, some of the buildings down there, they've got cafeterias in there. Some of the high-rise buildings you see here, they've got cafeterias or restaurants in there. And SNU actually has its own parking area over by the liquor store, which is far removed from Elm Street, even though they're downtown. And they have a bus that takes people back and forth, right? So they're never actually in downtown. Right. They're not actually a part of the city.
Well, it only stands to reason that a corporation is going to try to protect their employees. And if the downtown becomes you saw what happened in New York? Mm-hmm. Did you see that? In New York City, if people aren't aware, is I think it was a hair salon. A hair salon. Some homeless guy came into the hair salon and said, "I need to use the bathroom." And they said, we have no public restroom here. It's a hair salon. They are not required to, nor should they be catering to just anybody that wants to walk by. So they started getting upset, and then the homeless guy, and I'm not trying to disparage homeless people, because some of them really need help.
Right.
But this is the environment you create in situations like what's evolving in Manchester. And so the homeless guy just, I think, peed on the floor in the sink or something like that. And then it's a big row, and the cops were called. The cop comes in, and then another homeless guy who had already been arrested a few times for violent behavior saw what was going on and went in to, I don't know what he was thinking, protect his buddy. And I believe he hit a law enforcement officer over the head with a chair. I don't know.
Yep, I did. I read
Okay,
a
so
little bit about
this
it.
whole thing, because the streets are no longer. I mean, how many women are going to go in there to get their hair done? Really? You're going to send your
Well, there was a brawl at Market Basket today. At some point, I got an alert from somebody that there was a brawl and a pregnant. It said a pregnant woman was hurt. So I'm not really sure what happened. But on the street that my office is on, there were brawls, and brawls are, many people, not just one or two, just up the street from my office, and somebody was stabbed. I mean, this is happening all over the city. And even the areas like the North End that used to be removed from this stuff. We had a murder up there, and we had one. I actually was talking to a gentleman. The things that people tell you when you bump into them on the sidewalk. Hey, are you Victoria Sullivan? They start talking to me about things. I think it's great. I love it. But he started telling me, I said something like, he said, kids don't go outside and play anymore. I said, well, I do, but, we live in a pretty decent part of the town. And he said, I thought I did too. And he said, but there was a shooting right near where I live, and there was a 19-year-old that was killed. And he said that changed, it changed his perspective. He thought that he lived in a quiet, nice neighborhood, and for all intents and purposes, it is, but it takes, this is, we've got a lot of gang violence in the city, and that can happen anywhere, on any street. And, this mayor in one of the debates, and I believe it was the Chamber of Commerce debate, said, my weeks are getting a little fuzzy. We've been doing so much. We had 3 debates in a week. I believe it was the chamber debate where I was talking about the homicides were up, and she said, but those people all know each other. Well, there was a woman that was murdered by her boyfriend on the west side. I don't think it makes her family feel any better that they knew each other. And even, with the gang-related stuff, bullets, as you know, don't always hit their intended target. And
whether or not they know each other doesn't change anything.
It doesn't change
Well, they know
anything.
each other, so there's a couple of things that are coming out from Mayor
one
Craig.
of the deaths
Statements
was a
like that
baby,
that are.
right, that ingested the drugs that their
I
parents
think we've had a couple of those. 'Cause
One
there
time
was
she said-
one little kid that died right in back of my daughter's apartment, right in the next, just on the other side of the alley.
One comment she made recently in the last couple of weeks was that crime is actually up across the state. So we're going up as long as at the same rate that the rest of the state's crime is going up, and I don't find that as a viable excuse either.
No,
We should be
especially
leading the
since-
way and going the other direction.
No, and when I was doing my debate preparation and I was watching the debates from 2 years ago when she was up against Mayor Gatzis, she hammered him for the crime and the opioids and the 3rd grade reading levels. Those are things she hammered him on and held him personally responsible, regardless of what was happening. And he put in the safe station. He did make decisive things to try to make the city better. And for a while, safe stations worked well. We're in a different spot with that now, where we have to really take a look at it and try to reform it. And we've got some legislation up there that will help other people put in similar things that should take some of the burden off of us. But she absolutely blamed him for everything. It was squarely on his shoulders. And now that things have gotten worse under her leadership, she's saying it's the state's fault, or the governor's fault, or whoever's fault. This governor has given Manchester a lot of resources. Governor Sununu has been very good to us. And I know that he's reached out several times to try to help with the city, and she didn't want to be a part of that conversation. Even with the budget, when you guys came to the budget impasse, Governor Sununu, and we needed that budget. There was a lot of money in there for mental health treatment, and we need that in this city. A lot of these homeless people, that's what they need. They need mental health treatment. And that budget was important to us. So when the Democrats vetoed it, killed it, and he was trying to bring forward another budget, he called upon all the leaders in the state. He called on the mayor of Nashua, who is a Democrat, who came to see him. Portsmouth, Keene, like all of the leaders from across the state. They met to discuss the budget and where they could find a compromise. This mayor didn't go to that meeting. She sent Arthur Beaudry, who's a school board, he sits on the school board, he's a school board vice chairman, I think, to that meeting instead of her. She would not attend that meeting and sit down with the governor and do what was best for the city. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, we cannot have this partisan stuff happening that keeps us from getting the help that we need for our citizens. People are dying at a faster rate than they were 2 years ago. And we need to reach out and do whatever we can to help people and to turn our city around before it's too late. When I'm out there talking to people, and I've been in the parks talking to homeless people, and I've been in the trails, I've been all over. I've been in classrooms, and I've been in colleges. And when I'm talking to people, what shocks me the most is how much our kids are seeing and taking in. And this cannot be their new normal. When I talk to little ones, like in kindergarten, and they tell me, I say, what do you want me to do as mayor? Like, what is important to you? I'm afraid of the people that are in the park sleeping. They scare me. I'm afraid of them. Or, I'm living with foster parents because my parents are suffering from addiction and I don't get to see my parents anymore. Or, they say that they're walking down the street and they see the older kids. Well, we walk down the street and we see people shooting up, or we see what's happening and going on. They know that they know about prostitution at young ages because they see it happening in our parks. And we have to really be aware that when we're walking through the city and we think our kids aren't paying attention, they're taking in a whole lot of this. And like I said, this can't be their new normal. We need to turn the city around for them.
Yep. No, I took my granddaughter to the park the other day, but nothing happened. It was kind of rainy and drizzly, so nobody was out there. But you're when I was growing up, your kid, when they're like 8 years old, could go
By themselves
anywhere they wanted. Because who's going to mess around with an 8-year-old little kid? But nowadays, you would have to be out of your mind to just let them run around.
Nope.
It's not safe. It's not reasonable. Just the idea that you have needles in parks, a kid runs and falls on a needle. Just a little bit of that fentanyl will kill him, or whatever disease is in the needle will kill him. It's insane.
It's really just hard. It's hard to watch the city going through this. It's sad. And we need to work together to turn the whole thing around. And I think we can do it. I always feel like it's such a downer when we talk about this stuff because it's so serious and it's so important, and it's happening. It's changing so quickly in our city. And it's, we are really at a crossroads. And if we don't make change now, we could be beyond a point where we can turn things around, or it will take a lot longer to turn things around. And I meet so many people that are getting tired because they're doing all the work out there. But, the hope is that they're not done yet. Like, they tell me, I'm not done yet, and I'll get behind you, and I want to turn the city around. And we have so many good people out there that are doing the work that just need support. And they know how to do this work. And we just need to support them so that we can do exactly what we need to do as a community and take our city back and turn it around.
Well, I think also we need somebody in as mayor who has vision. Okay, so when Mayor Craig took office, one of the first things she did was go plow down all those homeless shelters along the river. Well, I was just talking to J.P. Marzullo, who helps fundraise and do stuff for Liberty House, and that was all stuff that they were working with those people.
Yep, I know.
And a lot of that stuff that those people had was from Liberty House. So you have people, I think of it this way. So you got people that might not have much.
Yep.
They said, well, Liberty House needs my help, so I'll go bring them a backpack that I have left over from whenever, or I have this, or I have that. They clean it up, bring it over to Liberty House, and then the next thing they know, that backpack that they gave to Liberty House is tossed by the mayor and
there were organizations down there that gave them food stores. So some of these people don't want to go to the shelter for anything, for different reasons. There have been bed bug issues, or there are people there that they're afraid of. We had a stabbing outside there not too long ago.
Yeah.
Or, they don't want to go there. Some of them have told me they don't want to leave their stuff to go down there because their stuff will be stolen. They won't have their tent or whatever when they get back.
Right.
So there are people down there that give them food supplies that they can cook when they want to. They don't spoil. There's an organization that sort of figured out how to do this, and they can, cook it or heat it up or just cook it cold or eat it cold, whatever they want to do with it. But it's there for them. That was destroyed too. So everything that they had, but the bigger piece of this whole picture, besides the stuff that they were given that was destroyed, those people had relationships from those organizations, had relationships with these people that were living outside.
Right.
They knew who they could continue to work with and help get up and out of poverty and get back into a place to live. They knew who needed care and treatment, and they really built relationships, and they were taking care of these people where they were at and helping them the best that they could. Once they did that, immediately people moved downtown, and that's how we got the situation down here.
Yeah, but that's what I mean about some. You have to have somebody that's willing to think about what they're about to do instead of just acting without understanding the ramifications.
That's right. But Liberty House is one of those organizations that does really good work for
They're
our
wicked
city.
cool, wicked cool. And in case people don't know, a Liberty House. Oh, I should have checked. Liberty House has got a breakfast, a fundraising breakfast coming up, and I
Veterans
forgot.
Day.
Veterans Day. Yeah, Liberty House has Veterans Day has a breakfast if you want to get involved and help out and have
And they're on
breakfast.
Facebook, and their event is on Facebook.
They're,
and you can sign
yeah.
up on Facebook.
Check them out. They're a really great organization. They're one of the cool things about Liberty House is, oh gosh, my mind is so messed up. I just thinking of Liberty House, and I was thinking of
Too many thoughts at once. That's what it is, Gary. You're
what
too
was that,
smart.
what was that movie with John about the
Well, you can't even
You got to
complete
give
a
us
sentence.
more clues than that. It was the
No.
movie with the person about the thing.
No, but they had it was about like a Dartmouth College or something like that. They had the frat house where everything was going wrong, and they were getting
Is it
in
a comedy
trouble.
or
yeah,
serious?
comedy, double, triple probation.
Animal House?
Animal House, yeah.
How can you forget that?
I don't know, because I can forget anything.
I was thinking Goodwill Hunting. I was like, is it a comedy or was it not? Where are we going?
Either one. Take your pick. Anyway, it just as soon as I said Liberty House, I was just thinking of that.
Of Animal House? I don't
Yeah.
think they like that correlation.
No, probably not. Double secret, yeah. So let's pretend I didn't say that. That was. So anyway,
Can I just comment on how I think we've covered every shade of blue between us?
Between us, yeah.
oh yeah,
Blue, teal.
that is probably
white.
the most important
navy.
thing.
And then your pin is even a little bit in there.
It is. What color is it
It's
today?
like a dark green.
Dark green, yeah.
Bluish, tealish. We've
Wow.
covered all the blues.
Wow.
Even your coffee cup.
Oh yeah. That distracted the heck out of me. So yeah, Liberty House is cool because
Because it is not Animal House.
it's not Animal House, which is good. But the fact of the matter is, they learned a long time ago that if they started taking money from the government,
Yes, they had to
Then
have
their
their
regulations-
regulations.
because there was because this is how stupid government is. So at Liberty House, they allow people to come in and stay, but if they start doing drugs again, they're out. Okay, so if they were to take, this is my understanding, I could be wrong, but my understanding is if they took somebody in and they were taking federal money and they started doing drugs, they had to let them stay.
That's my understanding too. People have told me that about another organization that we have that houses people temporarily, and said that they can't drug test them because they will lose federal funds.
So that is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
If you've got 8 people that are just newly sober, and one person comes in and starts, is high, and they bring stuff with them, well, guess what you have in a very short order?
Right.
You have a whole house full of people getting high, and somebody's footing the bill,
And nobody can test them.
and nobody can test them or check, and it's maddening because there are people that are sincerely trying to pull themselves out. But temptation, when you're that addicted, is very difficult.
And think about how frustrating that is for the police, because they must know about a lot of these places,
Yeah.
right? But they can't do anything about it because those people can't be tested, and they just know that they're living in that house with those kids, and there's this going on. But
Yeah, it's
actually, our first responders, our police, those are the people that are being affected by this, all of these situations a lot. When the ACLU is here, not letting them do their job that they need to do, but also we're seeing a tremendous burnout in our first responders because of the Narcan and the drug overdoses, and it's just so hard to keep up with it. But we're hearing there's a lot of burnout, and people are just like, this isn't what I signed up for. It's the first responders have to deal with trauma every single time they go out, right? But if you're saving the same person over and over and over again and Narcanning them over and over and over again, at some point it must get very frustrating for you that this person isn't getting help, or this is the same call as yesterday for the same person.
Well, it's because we're not treating it like it is, which is a mental illness. It's not. I mean, I think people want to treat it. I'll give you an example. If somebody just drops dead on the street, you Narcan them, they come back. That person has every right under current law just to say, nope, I refuse treatment. I'm done. Yep. Thanks for bringing me back from the gates of hell, and I'm out of here. There has to be. We have to change the policy so that when somebody takes enough heroin that they basically clinically die.
It's not even heroin anymore. It's the fentanyl. Heroin isn't really killing people now. It's the fentanyl.
I get that. Not strong enough anymore.
That's right.
You got to spike it.
And so what's happening with that is because they're getting Narcan, and then the next time they get high, they have to use a higher dosage to get high, right? So then they need more Narcan. And then at some point, that Narcan isn't going to be enough, and it's not going to work anymore. And, if you've ever been with somebody who's drunk and you try and take their keys, they're not in the mental state to really make a good decision or a good choice, to listen to you and say, I need your keys, right? So when someone is high or they've just been Narcan and they come out of it and you're like, do you want treatment? They're not in the right state of mind to make that choice. They should have to go and talk to somebody and get some treatment for it. The other part of that is they're not well, right? So if you receive Narcan, like if you had a heart attack in the street and they had to do CPR and resuscitate you, they would not say, okay, Gary, you're good now, go home. You would go to the hospital to get checked out to make sure you were okay enough to go home.
Right.
And
for all intents and purposes,
you wouldn't
these people
be able to refuse that treatment either.
No, and for all intents and purposes, these people have died, and they're brought back by the Narcan, and they're just released. No, they're not brought to the hospital to make sure that they're actually okay.
Well, it's not only just that. It's if I'm playing Russian roulette, and let's say I shoot my ear off, right? I miss because I'm not a very good shot. And the police show up because they hear a gunshot fire, and they said, what were you doing? Oh, I was playing Russian roulette. Do you think the cops are going to say, oh, you okay now? Yeah, I'm fine. Well, put a Band-Aid on it. We'll see you later. They're not about to do that because you were just you were engaged in a behavior that threatened your own life. And so they would take you to the hospital and have you observed for I don't know how long, but you would be under observation. And there is no difference from that to somebody who would stick a needle in their arm knowing that there's a high probability that they will die. They are playing Russian roulette all the time, and there's nobody putting the brakes on and say, oh, not my house.
Right.
Because that's what it is. They are playing Russian roulette with needles, and it's insane to conclude that once they've received Narcan that they are in their right mind and it's okay to let them go, because obviously they're not.
Nope.
So.
And it's not just shooting up anymore either. They're putting fentanyl in everything. So they're lacing pot with fentanyl. They're lacing street drugs like, street Ritalin with fentanyl. And these dealers are trying to figure out what's the right balance between addiction and killing somebody, because they want to keep them addicted, right? That's the whole thing, so they can stay in business. So it's in everything. So it's not like, when years ago when someone would smoke pot and you're like, oh, they're just smoking pot. You don't know what's in it now, and it could be laced with fentanyl. And it's so scary as a parent of teenage boys. It's so scary because nothing is safe out there.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if they're trying to get, I mean, drug dealers are some of the sleaziest people on the planet, and the fact that they would actually lace things with fentanyl, just trying to find that balance, that they can start getting people addicted enough to want the fentanyl only,
Yep.
is so evil.
And now we have.
I don't understand why these people aren't taken and launched off a very, very high bridge.
And now we have another generation.
Would that be legal?
I don't think that's legal.
Oh.
And now we have a whole
You're
generation
my
of
legislator.
kids.
You can introduce a
right?
bill.
Well, it wouldn't be a death penalty
It's more of a
as much as a
We
long.
can't have that anymore.
catapult penalty.
There is no death penalty.
There is, I know, but I'm not saying death. I mean,
Well, I think if you catapult someone off a bridge, the
no,
end result is likely death.
no, it's
Some water underneath it.
no. If they can evolve and fly by the time they hit the ground,
I don't think it's
because it's the same.
Oh God, he's always in the air. We're back to like the raised cities. Like you're always, you always elevate the conversation.
I know. That's exactly. That's kind of how I roll. But yeah, I mean, I think if you were just somebody's convicted of selling fentanyl in the city of Manchester, you take them, launch them off the bridge, and you're
And
not,
if they live,
if they live, then they're okay. They can go away. They can walk away.
they can go deal more
Well,
drugs.
it's
And if they don't,
Oh well. But it's not like unlike what we did with witches.
okay, but
We dunked them in the water. If they float, they're a witch.
okay.
If they stay under, they're
So
not
you know
a
that
witch.
didn't work, right?
Depends on who you ask.
Pretty sure the people that weren't witches that died weren't happy
Right.
with that kind of.
Yeah, but
Solution.
at least their name was clear, Victoria. I mean, why aren't you looking at the bright side?
She wasn't a witch after all.
Oh well.
Look at that.
Look at that. I guess we made a
Oops.
mistake. Same thing with the catapult. Oh.
Wait,
I
that
gue-
that wasn't.
I guess he was innocent. Dang. Fifth
I don't
one
think
today.
we should go back to those days. Even.
Oh.
We'll
Oh,
chalk
come
that up to
on.
Halloween being tomorrow. That was your train of thought. Was
Me? I don't know why you come on this show. It can't be good. It can't be good.
We were
for you.
so close to having like a serious conversation.
I know. Then I had to bring in catapults.
No, but I'll tell you what we really have to start concentrating on. We do
Yes.
have to concentrate on the people that are suffering from addiction and getting them treatment and care.
Absolutely.
We also have to concentrate on the children because we are seeing kids that are living in this situation coming through with trauma and dealing with the trauma of it all,
Guess what that leads to?
more addiction.
Yeah.
So we need to, with the DOE, I work part-time with UNH and the DOE, and we're working with trauma care for children in the classroom. So if you have teaching teachers how to recognize it. So if you've got a child that's kicking up a fuss, are they, kicking up a fuss because they're disobedient, or is there more going on in their lives and we got to figure out how to deal with this child where they're at, right, and get them help and treatment. And a lot of these kids are in foster care, or they came from foster families. I know a lot of Manchester families. This is the good stuff. This is the happy stuff. So many families have adopted children that are in need because of this opioid epidemic, and they've taken them in and they have adopted them and they're caring for them, and these kids have a new lease on life. But these families are receiving education in how to deal with trauma and give these kids the best life that
really?
they can, and not push it, not be like, it's all good, you came from that, it's behind you now, we're just a family, but deal with the trauma that they have been dealt and figure out how to work with them to alleviate that and put them on a healthy path emotionally.
So what happens with kids, and it can be it's a different trigger for different kids, but basically something happens in their life and it creates massive trauma or severe trauma.
Yeah, and it can actually change your DNA. And I didn't know that. So that you end up reacting to things in a much different way.
So what happens is you have your fight. Everybody has a fight or flight. Anybody that's been scared knows they get high anxiety, and all of a sudden they don't know whether they're going to run or fight or have lunch. So I was thinking about the State House. So
Wait a minute. I'm just gonna have lunch.
wait a minute.
Don't stab me. I'm just gonna sit here and have lunch.
I'm just
taking a
eating.
lunch
I'm
break
just
before
taking
we
a lunch
continue.
break. No big deal. So anyway, sorry. So there's a center of your brain that reacts to fight or flight
For lunch.
or lunch, and so it creates like I think it produces adrenaline and different things like that. And with a kid that's gone through trauma, they're feeling that stress level all the time.
Yes.
Okay, so they're full of basically anxiety all the time. And do you know what happens the first time they pick up a drink and have a couple of beers? It goes away. They just found God.
Yeah.
They just found the magic elixir that's going to fix all their problems. And what happens after a while of taking alcohol to self-medicate? Well, it doesn't do the trick anymore.
Right,
So
so
maybe
you
you
have to-
turn to this, you try that. So the kids that are going through trauma in our city at a young age are the ones that are most likely
Yep.
to end up addicted and living on the streets also.
That's why it's really important to get them treatment now. And again, it goes to the mental health treatment and supporting that, because these kids need a lot. A lot of these kids are now in loving homes, which is great. There's a huge need still for foster care in our foster parents in our city. But it takes more than love. It takes people being educated, knowing how to deal with these kids that have been through so much trauma.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
yeah.
in generations before, this happens with kids that lose a parent from the military, right? And we've often just pushed it aside and said kids are resilient. Kids aren't that resilient. We're finding that out a lot. Kids aren't as resilient. That's just, adults making excuses for their own behavior and pushing off their part in it, their responsibility in that. Kids need help through these things, and they need to have care through these things, and they need to have their feelings acknowledged. It's
Yep.
You can't just say buck up cupcake. They have real needs that need to be addressed.
Yeah, if you look at some of the people that are living on the streets, there's some military guys, and it's the same thing.
It is.
They've been in combat, and they have this same stress level.
And for a long time, we didn't address PTSD because these guys just came back and pretended everything was fine because they were supposed to, right? Because they're
Grit your
these
teeth,
big,
tough it
tough
out.
men and women. They were in the military, and they're not supposed to talk about PTSD. They're supposed to tough it out until we started noticing how many were taking their own lives. And then people, being brave enough to come out and talk about it and get treatment for it. And,
we had the Speaker of the House on last week talking about it.
really.
Yeah, because that's why I had him on to talk about that aspect of it, because it was Vietnam was 50
Yeah.
plus years ago, and it still haunted him.
Yeah, General Bulldog, who's running for...
Yeah, I
president.
love General
He talks
Bulldog.
about that quite a bit, too. Invite him in. He'll bring Victor, his dog.
Yes,
Dog's
he's on the list, but
And
yeah,
he's
he's a wonderful human being,
Mm-hmm.
and to me, that's one reason I'm supporting him for Senate. But because to me, somebody who's been through that and gotten help is so much being forced to look at your own demons and deal with your own demons breeds humility, because it is unless you have a humble spirit, you don't look for help.
Mm-hmm.
You tough it out. I'm man enough. I can do whatever I want. And what they end up doing is just gritting their teeth and living a life of misery.
Yeah.
But it was his wife told him,
Sharon.
Sharon, she's a really wonderful lady. She goes, "Look, I'm sick of raising these kids by myself. Get help or get out." Which is what tough love.
She's military, too, right?
Yeah, they
believe she
met in the
served too,
military.
yeah.
They met in the military.
Yep.
And
Tomorrow we've got Corky Mesner, who's going to be in the city talking to the veterans, dealing with them,
yeah,
talking about the issues that are important to the veterans too. So I'm glad that people are talking about healthcare for veterans and seeking out the veterans to have a conversation with, because I think for a long time they were left on their own.
Yeah,
know?
exactly. We do. We have to reach out. There's a lot of people with mental health issues need help. We got to help them. And then the people that are dealing drugs, we launch Catapult. We got to do the
And hope for the
Catapult.
best.
Well, I don't think necessarily hope for the best. It could be. You could sell tickets.
Hope that
You
they're
could-
actually guilty. How's that?
You could pay.
Unlike the witches.
We get some scorecards out. Oh, we'll give that one an 8.
Yeah, you
Oh,
could do
okay.
that, and you could sell tickets. It could be like a national. You could
You're going backward. You're going backward. Like that's not civilized society. You're going backward.
It's It's more like a Running Man, right?
Oh,
You know,
God.
you take the criminals and you make them compete against each other.
Well, no, that's cruel. Because a launch.
Why do I
And the
come on?
launch
Did you ask me
isn't-
why do I come on this show?
I wonder if she'll come on after she's mayor.
Of course I will. We have to talk about elevating the city. Putting this elevated apartments up there.
I think this is my greatest idea yet. Because the thing is, you could just sell tickets. It
So
could be.
what do you do on a windy day?
Well, you don't
Oh.
launch them, and you just give them.
Well,
if you angle the
You're going to
catapult,
have a field. It's going to be just like the
trebuchet.
javelin.
We use
field.
All right.
trebuchets.
So what if you catapult? I can't. I'm getting engaging in this conversation. I can't even believe what's come with me.
You better not say that.
What if you catapult someone and they end up in your elevated city that you want to have? Now you've just transferred the problem to somebody else.
Yeah, but remember, the elevated city was all people that we're going to cut loose anyway.
Yeah, if they're doing drugs, we just cut those people loose anyway.
It's a dark, dark place inside that head of yours.
Yes, but I enjoy it. Okay, we gotta go. Victoria, good luck.
Thank you. If you want to find out more about our campaign, VictoriaSullivanForMayor.com. Come out and vote November 5th, and we can take back the city together.
Yeah,
Thank
if you don't show up to vote, you got no excuse.
It'll be
Hey,
catapulted.
next week we got the Secretary of State coming on,
Oh.
Sir Bill of Gardner.
He
so
is a great
I
man.
love that guy. Okay, see you guys next week.
Thank you.